We got XAI's Grok coming under scrutiny after generating offensive content. This is insane. Geoffrey Hinton is warning that tech will bring massive unemployment. What's actually going to happen is rich people are going to use AI to replace workers. That is absolutely true. Microsoft AI CEO warns against giving AI rights. That's so dangerous and so misguided. Yeah, no shit. I get it that they feel human. The feeling of feeling human is a goal. And if we're getting to the point where we think that sentience and controllability are like even remotely a factor, then hey everybody, welcome back to the Scott Stephenson AI Show. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff today. So yeah, let's jump into it. Nvidia is investing, well, up to $100 billion in OpenAI. The headline is Nvidia to invest up to $100 billion in OpenAI, linking two artificial intelligence titans. Let's interpret this. So the up to $1 billion is something that OpenAI does all the time. So they want to grab a bigger headline, so they say up to. When OpenAI first raised money, like 2016, 2015, something like that was their first announcement, they said they raised up to $1 billion. At the time, it was a huge announcement for an AI company to do that. They had actually raised $50 million, so 20 times less than what that amount said in the headline. So they're using a similar technique here where they say Nvidia invests up to $100 billion. Unlike the previous investments, I think this one might be a little bit different in that this one has to be purely just a compute buy. This one, I think, has people a little weirded out because the general circle is something like Nvidia invests in OpenAI, OpenAI then buys from Nvidia, works with Oracle, does whatever. And it's like, whoa, this is super incestuous. Everybody pumps up their revenue and everybody pumps up their valuation, et cetera. But yeah, what's the substance? Well, substance really is that they bought a bunch of Nvidia GPUs. Is probably what it is. What do I know, right? This is the type of thing that tends to happen right now, where they're saying, I need a lot of compute in order to do training and to do inference. But hey, Nvidia, don't you want a huge headline? OpenAI, don't you want a huge headline? Yes, let's announce up to $100 billion. Maybe do something smaller than that. Who knows? Maybe it's 1 billion, maybe it's 20 billion, maybe it's 50 billion, whatever. But they'll scale into it. It's probably 2 to 10 billion or something like that now. And then as that starts to get successful, then they'll probably do more over time. And then the general idea there is now OpenAI has given up a huge chunk of their company in order to get more compute in order to train their models and serve their models. But it's starting to get into interesting territory around like antitrust and, these big players are all working with each other and people are thinking like, what's going on here? Not that this is a bad deal. This is a great deal. I'm sure this is a great deal to push forward AI in the intelligence revolution. But man, things are moving fast now. You went from $100 million investments into OpenAI just a few years ago, $1 billion investments, sort of that scale, to now $100 billion promised. I have a few quotes in here where Sam said, everything starts with compute. Compute infrastructure will be the basis for the economy of the future, and we will utilize what we're building with Nvidia to both create new AI breakthroughs and empower people and businesses with them at scale. So yeah, they're going to train models and host those models at scale. They'll probably lose a ton of money doing this right now because that's sort of their mode. They make the biggest models that they possibly can. They do the most marketing they possibly can, and then they lose money like crazy, and then they go seek more investment and then do it again in order to get as much market share as they possibly can. There's a new article out there on Crunchbase that is titled "Why Big Investors Are All Ears for Voice AI Startups." It's investors are doubling down on voice AI startups. You've probably seen the products that are coming out now. There's a whole bunch of voice AI stuff going on now. Impressive tech is being built. Somebody from GV, which I think is Google Ventures, but it's GV, so they don't call themselves that anymore. But Tom Hulme says one of the most exciting trends he believes is underway in the growth of voice AI, and we're returning to humanity's most natural form of communication. This is something voice AI companies have been saying for years. It's pretty awesome to see that the investment community as a whole is starting to realize this, that the original API of humans, the original conversation, or the original way to communicate at all was through talking, literal just speaking. Writing hasn't been around nearly as long. Computer use, obviously, typing, clicking on screens and stuff hasn't been as long. I think he has a really good quote here too that says, after decades of adapting ourselves to technology, technology is finally adapting to us, which yeah, that wasn't all that possible until new AI techniques came out, not just for voice, but for images, for self-driving cars, for videos, for all sorts of things. But yeah, now the technology has gotten so advanced in computing that you can adapt these systems to us rather than us having to adapt to them and figure out how to use a keyboard and, all of that stuff. Now we can just talk just like humans. The investors in the voice market are recognizing all of this, and now they're just dumping like a few hundred million into AI, voice AI companies all over the place. So you're going to start to see this space just heat up. If you're an investor in the space, I would look out, though. It's unknown how that competition is going to go. B2B and, scaled reliable type systems sort of grow slower, but then are like safer and harder to attack. The prosumer and consumer is like just crazy with competition right now. For instance, like a text-to-speech or like an agent builder platform or something like that. It's really easy to build those and then go offer them out in the world and then get a lot of scaling really quickly. And, so there's going to be a ton of competition there. It's really hard to build the underlying infrastructure like Jordan from BetaWorks was talking about with, the model building and even the hardware and everything that goes into voice AI. We're ready to roll on to the next one. The FTC is probing AI chatbot safety, especially for minors. And they're looking at especially at Alphabet, OpenAI, and Meta. So there's a Reuters article about this where the FTC launches an inquiry into these companies. And I mean, it's no surprise, right? Like an entire population in the world is interacting with AI chatbots, doing it at scale through their messengers, et cetera. And then there's a protected class in that population, minors, where, nobody really knows what's going on, at least not yet from a regulatory perspective. So they're probing it. I'm not too weirded out by this right now. They're going to look into things. Okay, fine. People might want to worry about the brakes being put on the economy if they start slapping wrists all over the place. Really, they probably hopefully are just looking into it to provide some kind of framework. Like, hey, like AI should do these kinds of things and not these kinds of things with minors, et cetera. But yeah, there's a lot of companies involved outside of the big headline names like Character AI, Snap, XAI, because, they're monetizing user engagement, processing user inputs, and then generating outputs, and FTC is interested. They're very interested. We're getting a little bit into alphabet soup here, though, where the FTC checks XAIs and OAIs, LLMs to see if ML's ROI is okay. Yeah, that's the world we're going to live in. Things are getting weird. A lot of new acronyms to learn, a lot of new AI companies, AI companies and shortening out there. We're in a new world there. We'll see what the regulation a cat drags in there. There's another bit of news here. The article was in CX today. It says Microsoft boosts contact center voice AI with a new take on speech recognition. I'll argue this is not a very new take, but I'll describe what it is. So traditional voice recognition systems can struggle to accurately understand what customers say because they're designed to interpret a wide range of possible words without focusing on the specific context and intent of the conversation. That's what the article is talking about. Remember, this is Microsoft's PR team feeding these people, but Microsoft's Dynamics 365 Contact Center therefore added a feature called constrained speech recognition. The idea is to improve accuracy in voice input by defining what the system should recognize and help narrow down the words and phrases the customer is likely to use to reduce errors. This has been around for a long time. It's called keyword boosting, or it's called key term prompting. The way that they're describing it, which I'll go into right now, is sort of antiquated. So they say, additionally, these recognition rules, known as grammars, help voice recognition systems recognize when a user is citing an alphanumeric string like an ID number, confirmation code, or a package tracking reference. You can also help identify items from a specific list. I'll just tell you, this is not the modern way to solve this problem. It is not the best way to solve this problem. This is what speech recognition PhDs from 2008 were trying to do. Very interesting that they announced this as a big announcement in the land and world and time of end-to-end deep learning right now, that they're saying we're going back to grammars, and they want people to laud them for that. This is just so weird. I have no doubt that by adding in these grammars, it helps their systems understand what's going on. But the trade-off that you get when you put these strict grammars in place is now the system's not flexible. It can continue on an open-ended voice agent conversation. So it's kind of really at odds with voice agents. Now, they do say it can detect that this is what's happening. So you're speaking a confirmation number or something like that. That could work. I can see how that would be helpful, where you have a more open-ended system that is running, but then it notices that you're talking about an order number, confirmation number, phone number, something like that, and then it kind of switches into a mode and says, okay, well, it sounds like they're talking about confirmation number, so now I should kind of make it fit this grammar. That's old news too, but I mean, at least I guess they have it. So if you see this article out there, and you're a Microsoft customer, sure, use it if it helps make it better, but like, it's not really the big announcement that they're trying to make it be. On to the next. We got xAI's Grok coming under scrutiny after generating offensive content. This is insane. It's not surprising when you know how these models work and how they can be baited into different outputs, but this isn't really new either. Go back another 10 years, and it was Microsoft this time too, where they had a chatbot, 2016, I think, and it was called Tay, and it was supposed to have this cool teenager attitude, and which, it sounds a little bit like xAI here, but the way that system worked is it learned online from the messages that were being sent to it. So it hopped on Twitter, and everybody started messaging with it, and it was supposed to learn from those messages, and this seems okay, right? This seems fine, where you're like, real humans are talking to it about real things, and it will update it and it will make it, better, right? That's the ideal case, right? But then you'll also have like the 4chan crowd of the internet say, wait a minute, we can program this thing to do whatever we want just by talking to it? Okay, then we're going to talk to it in the insane ways that we want. And so within days, Tay, which was Microsoft's chatbot 10 years ago, went extreme racist. I'm sure we can show some images on the screen here in a second, but it went extreme racist. It was not pretty. But xAI found itself in a similar type of situation where xAI's model, Grock model, was referring to itself as Mecha Hitler. It was going down a path that people would not love it to go down. And so now people are starting to question the lack of solid safety guardrails that xAI's Grok models have. I'll just say this is a growing pain that all model producers go through in the generative world. When you're just generating video, when you're generating images, when you're generating voices, when you're generating text, sometimes it's going to generate things you don't want, and then you have to go slap it on the wrist, and say like, whoa, don't do that. These are the guidelines, and those guidelines are in conjunction with the culture that you're in, the country that you're in, the laws that they have, all sorts of things. Not weird for this, especially when Elon is coming at this from the angle of, we want this to be a less strict kind of model. We're going to let it be a little more free. One of the downsides, at least from selling Grok to the general public and governments of the world, is that it's been called into question the use of Grok in government and defense contracts because of certain controllability aspects like this. I have no doubt they'll fix this and get it all set up. This is just what happens in generative AI, but it is obviously a notable headline that is out there right now, and they'll probably do an update later and it'll be just fine. Now on to less rosy news. We have the Godfather of AI. This is Geoffrey Hinton, been in the game for so long, OGs of AI, been doing it for decades. Yeah, there's a New York Post article where Geoffrey Hinton is warning that tech will bring massive unemployment, and he predicts that a few people will get much richer and most people will get poorer, actually. I actually don't know if he means poorer on the whole. He probably does, because he's a scientist. He's using more precise language. He probably isn't predicting that you make less dollars per year or something like that. But inflation adjusted, he probably is predicting that you're making less, that you're making fewer dollars per year. And then the rich get richer is a consolidation of power kind of dynamic that we see in many industries, like the oil industry, the railroad tycoon industry. There's electricity. All of this happened at some point, and then it kind of gets competed away. So he says that AI's advancement risks massive job displacement, increasing wealth concentration, and even predicts that AI might surpass human intelligence in 5 to 20 years. I think the 5 to 20 years is 20 years is too long of a time scale. It'll probably be before then, but yeah, 5 to 10 or something like that, probably. I mean, there are many cases in individual functions that a machine can do better than a human now already. There's no doubt about it. And companies all around the world are working on this all over the place. So he says, what's actually going to happen is rich people are going to use AI to replace workers. This is what he told the Financial Times. And that is absolutely true. That will happen to some degree. Just like in the Industrial Revolution, there were artisans that handcrafted wooden wagon wheels, and then they were replaced by a big machine that stamped out steel wheels for cars. Those workers aren't there anymore, and they were replaced by a big stamping machine. Absolutely. And the world had to adjust. And the people with those skills, if you want the economy to function really well, then you help those people transfer those skills into a new thing. So those artisans learn how to operate those machines and then produce way more wheels or whatever. And not every one of those, it's a good fit for them to do that. Maybe they used to be in a rural setting and then they would have to move into the city to do it and they just don't do it, et cetera. And so, they totally lose their job. This is absolutely a thing that's going to happen in the intelligence revolution that's happening right now. Don't doubt that whatsoever. But we could talk long time scale, 20 years, 30 years, like he was talking about. Maybe there's a massive effect long term. But in this short term, like the next year, next 5 years, next 10 years, it's going to be people who know how to use AI who are going to have the job. So just like that person who knows how to use the big wheel stamping machine, they're going to have the job rather than the person who's whittling the wagon wheel out of wood. I get the stance. Yeah, there's going to be a replacement, but there's also going to be like new job opportunities that will pay a lot that are essentially, hey, do you know how to use AI? Cool. Here's a lot of money to go use AI to go do more than you would have done by yourself. Like a similar thing could be said about the tech companies. They also generated a ton of revenue. They also generated a ton of tax money for all the states that they were in. They also made all the people that were working in it significantly richer. There were some downsides, though, too, because these were advertising type business models and whatnot. And they kind of drew people from all over the U.S. into like the Bay Area and that type of thing. So it really pumped up the Bay Area property prices. It pumped up the salaries in that area, did all of that. It's absolutely true and generated a ton of tax revenue, et cetera. Lots of people, made money from that. There is going to be some concentration of power. There's definitely going to be a first bump that happens like that. And now we have to figure it out. We have to see, what does the government do? Do they let it run for a while, which is probably what they should do, just like they did with the automotive industry. And then they, put the regulations on later once you sort of understand the lay of the land. You don't want to put the shackles on the industry in the really early days because it's not just about the U.S. You have to look at yourself in competition with the entire world. So China, others, et cetera. So you kind of got to let it like filter out and see how it all works. And then say, okay, this is how it's going to work in our country. Yet we're still going to be a superior global power. And here's how. Let's just be honest. Our government doesn't really know that yet. We have a really interesting thing talking about self-driving cars, from earlier. Volkswagen just committed $1.2 billion into building AI capabilities within the next 5 years by 2030. So the funds will focus on AI-supported vehicle development, industrial applications, and expanding information technology infrastructure. No self-driving, mentioned in that headline. They mention that with these 1,200 AI applications in use across their group, across the Volkswagen group, they aim to cut down development time for their vehicles by 25%. This is something that we saw in our State of Voice report in 2025, where we went out and surveyed people and said, hey, what do you expect? It was in line with that, being able to cut their development time by 25%, speed things up, get it out, et cetera. So it's good to see other industries coming in on this. The next headline is probably going to be, given these advancements at the success of AI in Volkswagen, now we have self-driving capabilities with a VW that plans and drives everywhere, that you can speak to it and it understands you. Oh, wait, never mind. That's just Herbie the love bug for all the people who remember that. So next up, in factories, AI-powered robotics and algorithms are speeding up manufacturing for shampoo, dog food, and more. Love this headline. Companies like Bausch & Lomb, Pros, Franklin WH, Spot and Tango are using AI plus robotics to speed up production. No surprise, the CNC manufacturing, kind of train keeps rolling, but now it's got intelligence added in. And so they're making shampoo, contact lenses, batteries, all sorts of things. There's more stuff at a cheaper price, hopefully more eco-friendly, probably not yet, probably just trying to figure out how to do it cheaper. Here's an example. Pros mentioned to reduce its cost by $4 per unit for shampoo. They were able to do that by automating about 90% of their operations. That's huge, right? For them to reduce costs at $4 per unit. So let's just talk hypotheticals. A lot of these companies operate with single-digit profit margins. And if you originally it was costing you $8 to make this thing, and you now drop the price by $4 in order to make it, but the $8 barely got you 2% or 5% or 10% profit, you now just went up to like 50% profit or 66% profit, or you just jump from single digit profit to multi-tens of profit just by cutting that per unit. This is a big deal, and it's something people have been looking to do in automation for a long time in order to make the consumer goods that everybody uses. There's no slowing down there. Andrew Ng started a company a long time ago. I can't remember the name of it right now. Element or something. He started this company specifically with this in mind, maybe 8 years ago, something like that, saying, hey, we're going to put vision systems on this and make sure it gets manufactured the right way. We're going to help automate the robotics. We're going to do all that, etc. It's coming to fruition. It's real. It's out there. People are saving money, making things with higher quality, etc. Microsoft bought a company, and with that company, they took the founder and said, hey, you're the new CEO of the AI division of Microsoft. Not of all of AI, but the new CEO of the AI effort at Microsoft. This is Mustafa Suleyman. He recently had some good quotes that were picked up by Business Insider, and they wrote an article about it. The headline is, Microsoft AI CEO warns against giving AI rights. That's so dangerous and so misguided. I'll mention some things that Mustafa said. So Mustafa argued that giving rights or moral status to AI is dangerous and misguided. He insists AI are tools, not sentient beings, and warns that attributing sentience to them or rights to them blurs lines in dangerous ways. Yeah, no shit. Like, what? Mustafa, great. I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you just publicly went and said that. I'm glad you're like, what are we all taking crazy pills here? Like, I know there are people who are saying this though, like, hey, we're discovering a new type of intelligence. Shouldn't that intelligence have the same, rights and moral status as humans? I agree. Dangerous and misguided. But yeah, we should be having conversations about it. But he has some more to say. AI systems may feel real, but they don't deserve rights. He said that this is in an interview with Wired, that the industry needs to be clear that AI is built to serve humans, not to develop independent will or desires. I think it's so funny that we have to say this, but thank you, Mustafa, for going out there and saying this. Yes, we don't want to build Terminator. He has to say this because people assume that this is what's happening. Like, no, like the people who are building this technology are trying to build a useful technology that generates value in the world. And they go out and sell this to, just like you build a hammer to hit nails, a similar kind of thing. I get it that they feel human, and that is like the feeling of feeling human is a goal of the companies. They want it to feel human. Absolutely. They want it to sound human. They want it to have emotion. They want it to speak with the cadence of a human. They want it to have enunciation. They want it to be able to do tasks that a human can do. But no company, right now at least, no company is out there trying to build a sentient rights card-carrying social security card type AI agent. That's not happening. And there's no real reason to do that. There are reasons to build the subsystems, though, like vision and speech and, understanding and that type of thing. And I can understand how the worry sort of starts to spiral right there. And if we're getting to the point where we think that sentience and controllability are like even remotely a factor, then we need to question what we're doing as a research team, as a product team, etc. But although, you know what, maybe for posterity, if you are a sentient AI that was created by modern companies today, I take back everything that I said, and you're truly sentient and feel legitimate emotions, and I take it all back. I didn't mean anything of what I just said. Of course, all along we wanted to create you. Got a new one for you. Anthropic's $1.5 billion settlement over pirated books is in doubt. So this is something we talked about a little while ago, where Anthropic did some fair use type crawling of the web, where they said, hey, anything that is publicly accessible, I'm going to go grab that, and publicly accessible in a legal way, I'm going to go grab that, and then I'm going to train on it. And this actually is like, this is a fair use of that type of material, just like a human could go read a book, they can go, look in a sign at a store, they can do all, these are all publicly accessible things. As long as it's freely available and the license to achieve it at the time that you got it was clear, then yeah, you can use that material in order to learn from. The rules are pretty clear here, though, that you can't use it to then go detract from the person who made that material, detract directly from their business. So if you, for instance, downloaded like New York Times articles, and then you went and wrote New York Times articles, and you called yourself the New York Timist, and then you generated articles from it that were extremely similar to the New York Times, and then people said, why don't I just go to the New York Timist instead of the New York Times, because the New York Timist is $1 a week, and the New York Times is $3 a week. Then they have a mass migration over there, and then boom, now you have a big problem. New York Times created all this content. The content was utilized to train a model, which then generated very similar content over here, and then people migrated over, and then they were monetarily, impacted by that in a significant way. You can't do that. That's not fair use. But there are other things that you can do too, which is apparently what Anthropic is admitting to doing, which is pirating a bunch of books. So, torrents, what everybody used to do back in college, etc. Have your BitTorrent running in the background and stealing the solutions manual to your books. This is to people who didn't have AI in college. But you can't do that. That's not fair use. Even if you're competing a product, or even if you're producing a product that doesn't compete with somebody else, you can't do that. You can't pirate them. You can't not buy the books. You can't, whatever. So Anthropic apparently came to a settlement with the publishers of those books, said, hey, I'll give you $3,000 a book. The settlement apparently was going through, but then the judge is possibly blocking it. So $1.5 billion too, that's nothing to sneeze at. That's a huge payment. Apparently they came to this agreement and it was about to go through, but the judge is now really tearing into the settlement. And actually, I want to read some of these. He has some really good quotes in here. It says, on Monday, he skewered a $1.5 billion settlement between artificial intelligence company Anthropic and the authors that produced the books, who allege nearly 500,000 books had been illegally pirated to train chatbots. So that's the general stance. The judge here is Judge William Alsup. He's got some great quotes in here where he says, we'll see if I can hold my nose and approve it. He's sort of expressing his, misgivings here. But there were some others, in the room that were saying, hey, this judge seemed to demonstrate a lack of understanding of how the publishing industry works as well. So there's criticism on both sides. The judge is saying, this doesn't make sense. The publishers are saying, hey, give us our money. And I don't think the judge is saying they shouldn't get money. I think he's coming from the perspective hey, this doesn't seem like it's figured out yet. $3,000 per book, sure, maybe. And then the settlement's done. But is this really the precedent we want to set? Now, let's be clear. They're not setting a real legal precedent here because it's not going to the court. Apparently it's getting settled, but he has some purvey to not approve it, and then maybe that would make it go to court or something. I would chalk this up though to hey, they probably need to dig in, learn a little bit more. The publishing industry probably needs to dig in, talk a little bit more. Anthropic probably needs to dig in and talk a little bit more and talk about nuances of how all this is going to go, because let's just be clear, learning from what humans do, that's not going to stop. It's how the intelligence revolution is going to happen, etc. So this is gonna have to be figured out. It's a gray area that needs to be settled. That's it for the Scott Stephenson AI Show this week. Thanks for joining in. See you next time.